What's up, friends? Welcome back to another episode of NFT 365. And as you've been hearing in the last couple episodes, we're talking everything from AI art to interviewing and having conversations around NFT marketplaces coming and going. Of course, we also kind of dove into some of the NFT artist spotlights that we teamed up with NFT with our good friends at Nifty Gateway to kind of curate and bring some of our community members' art to the forefront. And just from a context perspective, for those, I know a lot of our that are listening to the podcast every single day last season, and those that are with us now, a lot of you hold a lot of the different NFTs, and we have some cool utility and gates coming up for everybody that, if you hold some of my AI art or if you hold some of our Mint 365 NFTs, don't worry, we got you. We have some cool things that are in the works. And talking about cool, kind of not only cool concepts, but kind of trends and the way this world works. One of the beauties of this podcast is I get to interview and get to know people that have had all different walks of life, but also all different approaches to NFTs. And excited today, we have Ben, we have Ben Cohen, who Drew Cohen is the producer here of the podcast, but I don't believe there is a relation. But Ben is with us, who is the CEO of KillaBears. Ben, thanks so much for joining us. Introduce yourself a little bit to the audience that might not be familiar with you, and then we'll kind of dive into some of your history, and then of course we'll talk a little KillaBears as well.
For sure. Thanks for having me. And yeah, Drew and I are not related to my knowledge, but you never know. You never know. And I like him a lot. We've been chatting these last couple of weeks. So yeah, Ben Cohen, one of the co-founders of KillaBears, CEO, and I have been working in the internet industry, kind of all different parts of it, for the past 12 years, and absolutely love Web3, love the Bears, and yeah, really just trying to be here in the space, try my best to innovate and push things forward and bring some positivity.
I like it. I'm a big fan of the positivity, and we'll talk about like the free mint and some of the things that KillaBears kind of experience and we're part of. But before we get in that, you mentioned being in the kind of marketing online digital space for a long while, and as I was kind of researching and learning more about you, I think I think a lot of people that we've interviewed, especially in the on the podcast over the now, this will be, episode, I think 395. So 395 episodes in the NFT space is a whole lot of people. And I think lots of people have different kind of walks of life, but also different approaches to understanding like community and audience. But I don't know if we've had anybody on our podcast that really kind of doubled down on it the way that you did, and were able to really maximize growth on some different channels with really some creative approaches. So talk to us a little bit about like, you decided, kind of different approaches to, the not only, marketing side of the house, but then to dive in with some, Instagram and then also meme and then specialized accounts. I'd love to hear just kind of like, how did that all kind of come to life? And then we'll tie it back to Web3 for sure.
Sure. I'll try to give a crash course here. I could go all day and maybe one day we will. But so basically, I went to college, graduated, was going to go to law school, and I dropped out on the second day. And this was 2009. So the economy was actually not that dissimilar from where we are now. It was obviously a little bit of a recession. And I basically just took the only job I could get. And that was a marketing job at a sport marketing company. And I was there for some time and wanted to go to a really big corporation. And I got a job at NBC and I got fired. And then I got a job at a consulting firm and I got fired. And I think at this point I was 23 and I started to realize that the corporate world probably wasn't going to work out. And I was okay with that. I really wasn't happy. Like, it was emotionally, I think, a little bit difficult for me at the time. And, I was worried because I didn't know what my career had in store for me, but I had a lot of energy and I felt like, all of the online stuff sounded fun and the New York startup scene sounded good. And I ended up getting a job at a mobile app studio. And, they put me in kind of a sales business development role. They saw that I could talk to people and I was a people's person. And, that all was kind of the beginning of a great journey. And, from there I went off and started my own app studio and worked with a lot of really big brands. And ultimately I sold that business when I was 26. And I started making my own products after that. And I made an app called Wentagram. And I made the app was very simple. I believe it still exists. I sold it. But basically the idea with the app is you go in and it scrubs your Instagram engagement numbers, and it tells you if your audience is captive or not, and should you post now or not, based on some historical data projecting forward, predictive analytics. And the challenge with that app was it was hard to find users the way I was marketing. So I kind of tried everything, traditional PR, email, and what I landed on was Instagram meme pages. I started buying shout outs from meme pages, and we had a lot of downloads, and I could clearly see that there was traction, but there was really inexpensive impressions to purchase. It was an arbitrage, basically. So, I did it for a few weeks and got like hundreds of thousands of downloads. And at that point, I was thinking, did I find a place to go and buy ads for my apps, or did I find potentially a media business that I didn't anticipate I would ever get into? And I kind of decided to do both, which was tough. Looking back, it was insane, actually. But so I started buying Instagram properties from these people that were selling shout outs that they didn't quite understand the value of impressions. So you're talking about a page that had 600, 700,000 followers on Instagram with really strong engagement rates, selling it for $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. And then I would buy it, rebrand it, try to improve engagement, and then market my apps and ultimately video games, which is really relevant to the KillaBears because the team behind the KillaBears are a video game company. And I started to focus a little bit more on the branding of those properties as the portfolio grew. We had Basic Bitch, we had Eats, we had Vacay, we had Puzzles, we had all sorts of different pages. And we started to really get into the minds of our followers and our audience. And I think that that's actually been something that has come up big here in Web3. We have a really strong community, but the key is how do you work with the community and grow with the community? And it starts with listening, all of the signals that they give you on the content that you're putting out. Do they like it? Do they dislike it? Is there something that they'd like more of? And I think a lot of that understanding and social media prowess comes from those days. And of course, the video game side of things, similar to now, I'm the business and community marketing lead on that business. And Mikkel and Crypto Bean, my partners, that one's an engineer, one's a creative director. And ultimately, we all felt with the addition of Mimo Angeles, our artist who we're celebrating today with his open edition, we really had a compelling team for Web3 here with the KillaBears.
Nice. So, I love that context. And I think, we talk a lot, I don't think we talk enough, right, about also the understanding the difference between like building an audience and then understanding how to work with the community, and then also understanding, the importance of impressions. And I think a lot of NFT projects make massive mistakes they spend a lot of time pre-mint on those outside, right, building the audience, and then they get the community side, and they forget there's also still value and importance of keeping and growing an audience. And it sounds like that a lot of that kind of ties into your experience. I love that kind of story of kind of understanding kind of let's just say undervalued assets, also undervalued attention, which we know is even harder now than it ever pretty much has been before. I'm curious, as that, what was your first, when you kind of even before KillaBears, how did you first see the Web3 NFT crypto space? Was it something that intrigued you, kind of like the Instagram meme account side intrigued you, or like how did you kind of see it? I think everyone kind of approaches this space a little bit differently when they first got in.
Yeah, I didn't think highly. I really got burned by crypto in 2014. So, like I was saying, after I exited my first app business, I was 26, and that was 2013, the end of it. It was October. I remember exactly when I bought Bitcoin, and I really believed in it. I really liked it, but it was early, and so I bought, I think what ended up being like 30 Bitcoin. And I was really pumped. I was trying to get friends involved. No one really cared. And there was the Mt. Gox hack, which I think most people in Web3 don't even know about now. But
yeah, it's true. Every time I bring it up, most people aren't familiar with it. You're right.
Yeah, I remember when I bought my first Bitcoin, it was like $600, and then that weekend it raced to 1,200, and it was nuts. And then Mt. Gox hack happened, and we went down towards 200, and then it started to go up a little bit and settle, and I kind of kept buying, but ultimately around sometime in 2014, it was a little sideways, and I was like, I could just buy stocks or do something else, like, so I sold all of it. And then obviously there's been, two bulls since then. And it really hurt, it felt stupid and whatever. Anyway, so then you fast forward to Top Shot. My little brother, he's 5 years younger than me, he was playing Top Shot, and he was having some success, and he kept saying, like, you would like this, this is your thing. And I was like, I'm busy with work. Like, don't bother me with this crypto stuff. It's not going to, I already did it once. It was a waste of my time. It only gave me a heartache. And, he kept bothering me. And then one night he called me. He was like, listen, I really want to get this Giannis, this Greek freak moment, but it's a little expensive. I'm not comfortable buying it myself. Can you just split it with me? So I said, like, whatever. I was supporting my brother. I wasn't interested in Top Shot. So I sent him on Venmo some cash, and that thing mooned really fast. Within like 2 weeks, it went like 30x. And then I was like, all right, let me pay some attention here. And, I loaded up on Flow, and I bought, a good amount of Top Shot, but I was late. I was late to the party, clearly, because it's worth a lot less than I put in now. And so once again, like, my kind of similar to 2014, I didn't feel very good about crypto or NFTs. And then finally, when my partners approached me saying, listen, you would really love this, but let's do it on the operating side. We're not going to be investing. We're going to be building. And like, this is going to work out. We've got the right people. We've got experience, and we've got a good vision on what we want to do. Let's just do it. You'll be great. I didn't have to be convinced that hard. I think their confidence showed me that this made sense. And 9.5 months later, I'm obviously very happy with the decision to do what we did. And yeah, man, I love it.
That's great. Yeah, it's funny. If I had to go back and, we interviewed well over 100 people now on the podcast. It's, the entry points are Top Shot, VFriends, or Clubhouse. Like, really, for the most part, those three kind of cover. And I like you. Top Shot was my first in, and I was late into that game as well. And I definitely upside down in my Top Shot commitment. But I love that you kind of set that stage, right? Because the Mt. Gox piece of Bitcoin also is context for a lot of people that see the hacks or the what FTX what we went through most recently. But I also think there's elements of like reinvention and let's face it, probably NFT space is kind of in that 2014 Bitcoin space, where that was back then, right? Because we still are, very immature as a whole. Talk to me a little bit. You said about 9 months, right? So we did the podcast. I got in this space that kind of December of 2020, and then we launched the podcast in November of 2021. And I bought an NFT every single day for a year. So we bought 365 NFTs. And I did them all in the mint phase. So everything was pre-reveal, mint phase, researching 4 hours a day, buying an NFT every day. I still hold all of them in a time capsule, so we're selling it as one. But I will say that, in that year, right, when I launched this project in November 11th, it was the hype. It was insane. Like, I joked, like, I was narrowing down 30 ETH mints to 5, and like all 5 of them seemed quote unquote good, because it was hard to measure what the hell was good and what was not good at the time. But then we kind of went through to the new year, and then of course the start of the year, and things started to recognize that, oh wait a second, it's a lot of hype, a lot of giveaways, a lot of nonsense, and a lot of just people money grabbing where it was. But then of course we had some waves, right, where the bear market kind of started, but then we kind of had like the free mint wave, which is one that is definitely interesting, because you mentioned, the open edition that you guys are doing later on today, for those that are listening live here on Twitter Spaces. But before we get into that trend, the free mint trend was definitely one that took off. And I can jokingly say, I have 6 wallets worth of free mint NFTs that no one should ever look at ever again. As I was I got in on Goblin Town early, and I actually minted that. I only because I'd already knew a couple of the other people that were talking about it. Ended up getting in early there, and I still hold Goblin Town today. But then, of course, that kind of popped off. So talk to me a little bit about, like you said, your partners kind of approached you when you guys were looking at that market. I mean, that was an interesting time. And then to do a free mint, but also to have, a gaming company behind it, your marketing expertise behind it. Talk to us a little bit about like that go-to-market strategy and kind of what that was like back then, because there'll definitely be some of our audience that weren't in this space, when that was all going on.
Yeah. So we minted April 13th, and it was meant to be a charged mint. Now, April 13th, if you just zoom out a little bit, ETH was coming down. Other side was dropping in like 8 days.
Yep.
You could feel the wind changing. Think there had been a lot of rugs, and I think people were starting to get tired of that. Anyway, I got involved with, obviously growing the Discord and generating hype and excitement was a big priority of mine. And getting a whitelist full was also, and we had a very full whitelist. It was definitely oversubscribed. But what happened was when the mint opened, we only sold 75 bears. And then that was, after I don't know, that was pretty fast. But then after 15 minutes, I was like, shit, this isn't going to happen. So I got on FaceTime with the guys, and I was like, we've already delivered so much of the roadmap that no one knows about. I was like, we can't let this, a negative cycle of FUD hit us here. So we don't really need the money for the full treasury to start. We've already done a lot, and we have a real business. So let's, with the video games, so I was like, let's just go for it. Let's go free and whatever. Let's see what happens. And it was nuts because we were trying to let people that were on the whitelist mint free. So what was happening was people were coming into the Discord in the tens of thousands. It felt like probably actually thousands, but it felt like people were just pasting their wallets in general chat. And then we were manually whitelisting them, and they were getting it. And then eventually we just kind of said this is way too much. Let's just let it rip and make it general public and scrap our whitelist plan. And, we minted like this. And then the FOMO of people coming remember, we were before Goblin Town by about a month. So
right, yep.
Free mints were not a thing. They were not a thing. So we got whatever feeling that it gave, FOMO, I want to say, but there's probably other feelings of something that's shiny and new. It gave. And then people showed up in our Discord late, and they were like, shit, but I still want this. And then we went trending on IC tools and OpenSea really fast. And the rest is history. We managed that momentum of the first day or two well, and we got close to the community that ultimately is still our community now. And it worked out, but it was a circus that day. It was really, nothing went to plan, but we thought quickly and acted quickly and did what we felt was the best thing for the brand that we wanted to create. And no regrets. It worked out.
Well, I think there's a couple of things there that you have to tip your hat to you and the team, because really no one was adjusting at the time, right? For context, now people adjust supply and demand. We saw Porsche cut supply of their project as if it was normal, right? But we go back to April time frame. Not only was there free mints were not the norm, but cutting supply, right? After mint, definitely not the norm. Then also kind of doubling down at that point, right? Hey, we're gonna continue to deliver. So that's impressive. I always like to look. What did I buy on that day that was minting, April 13th? And I actually bought a project by Ape Liquid called the Liquid Legends, which is a project that I still hold. I actually hold a bunch in that one. It's one of my current projects that I love. So at least I always like to man, what the hell did I miss on that day? And as you were saying that, I was like, when was the first one that we added to the collection that was free? And it actually wasn't until May. So it was May 16th was the first free mint that I added into our collection. So that's very interesting on you guys kind of not only kind of lead setting there, but kind of doubling down and kind of betting on yourself. What did you think from as the Goblin Town kind of free mint craze kind of took off? You were there beforehand. but in a way you kind of benefited from it not being like kind of a craze, right? Because you were able to kind of get holders. But what was your thoughts as like all of a sudden it became sexy and cool, yet you guys had already done it kind of prior to?
I'm friendly with Alex,
Yep.
founder of Goblin Town. And I tell him, like, what they did was absolutely mind blowing. It was nuts, because what happened was, like, it was not that long after us, and we were trying to like build, we were trying to
Yep.
get, onboard holders, show our vision, trying to find our voice, because obviously we were new to Web3, so trying to find the best way to disseminate information and news and stuff. And then all of a sudden you start hearing about goblin voices on spaces. And so basically, like, there was one day I was like, why is it slowing down? Like, there was so much, so much volume the last few days. What happened? Somebody, did you hear about this goblin thing? And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, they're making noises on spaces. And I was like, what? So I went on a few spaces and I was just like, what is this? And I was like, who does this? Like, I couldn't figure it out. And then I was like, oh my God, it's so clever. I was like, mystery sells. Like mysteries, so ultimately watching the rise of it was amazing. And it really, we may have started the free mint meta, but what Goblin Town did was they made it so cool that every dev and their mom wanted to do it. And then you have this phase into the summer where there's free mints nonstop, and they're happening. And then eventually they stop. And so it really is a great thing, because that came in hot and heavy, but then the trend kind of died, because when the dust settles, you need to actually like deliver something real, and and you need to give holders confidence. So I hold Goblin Town. I really like Alex. He's also a really big supporter of what we're doing here with the Bears, and I really admire what they did. They thought outside the box. I mean, and I only can imagine what other experiments he's kind of got in mind. To start that way was nuts, and it really worked. It worked too well. I mean, it was almost a 10 ETH floor, and no one even knew who was behind it. There was no roadmap. It was completely unheard of to do what they had done, and I admired it big time.
Well, and I can imagine that too as well, just because you had already understood kind of meme culture and understood that in your kind of previous life. And so I'm curious from that side. I jokingly say I'm older. I'm 41, so I'm an elder millennial, and I kind of jokingly say I kind of like the meme craze, as far as like me being emerged into it, was not really like, I kind of missed a lot of that early on, and I hate feeling like the old guy at 41. But at the same time, like I'm an early adopter in platforms, Google Plus. I had one of the largest shows there, live streaming, Meerkat, Periscope. Like I like living on that early adoption phase, and part of the early adoption phase is both like the mystery, unknown, speculation, but also how can we tie things to like greater cultural pieces, right? We see nostalgia being a massive thing right across the board, where people can kind of tap into that. I'm curious your take, like, as you were getting more into Web3, right, over these 9 months, started to see what you were doing with KillaBears. How many things did you kind of attach back to some of those trends that you were kind of leveraging in the IG space, and also the gaming and app space? Because let's face it, the app space was a new market, a new demographic. No one had figured out advertising or even lookalike audience management. Of that was all kind of new in that space. How have you kind of looked? Because I'm bullish on KillaBears based on your background and the fact that you have a company, a brand behind it, because I think so many of those things this space needs, and I think we're past the days of hype for hype's sake and a lot of vanity. But yeah, give me a little bit of your take on how you kind of connect some of these cultural memes and also cultural trends into what matters here in Web3.
So what I would say, and this sounds a little crazy, is my career it's all been in the internet. But if you talk to like friends or family, every couple of years I'm kind of like jumping around. One time it's SaaS, then it's e-commerce, social, video games, high tech, mobile. And what I would say is every experience since I've been 23, every single one has played a massive role in where we are now. Like, there's not one experience from all those things that I've done that doesn't, like, I don't notice at some point in my day, every single day. It's just kind of like bricks building on top of each other. Now you've got a house. I feel like the meme culture, the understanding of software and experiences, the understanding of how audiences want to feel and how they want to interact, to things like more basic marketing like conversion rates, funnels, all of that kind of stuff. Organic traffic versus inorganic traffic. Every single thing is really kind of right here, all right in front of me. So all of it it couldn't be a better. I couldn't be more equipped for this, I think. That's what I would say. I think everything kind of happened in the right time and right place, and yeah.
I like that. And I think that, I think where, like you said, right time, right place, also where the space is moving towards, right? And so give us kind of I'm curious, as KillaBears, not only were you kind of finding your voice, made kind of like, setting here in Web3, but you guys have had, from a reputation perspective, everyone I know that has any, ties to the community or aware of what you guys are doing are big fans, right? You've created really a really strong momentum and movement. I'm curious your take on, you have a not a 10K collection, right? So it's a smaller collection in that sense. What does that mean for, like, how have you kind of approached like some of the nuances, right? You moved to a free mint, 3,333 in the collection. I know you're doing an open edition drop now. Talk to me a little bit about like maybe some of that, like how do you think that also kind of plays in, and how are you guys leveraging the fact that you have such a strong base that a lot of communities that have 10,000 pieces would kill to have that kind of strong base that you've created?
I think I think overall, the thing I'm most proud of is I think we've done a very good job of managing momentum and the circumstances of this market, specifically a shitty market. The small collection has been good because I think from a value perspective, our holders feel that it's not that difficult to get value appreciation. And at the end of the day, I think a lot of NFT collectors want to feel like they're going to make, a profit. Whether it's realized or unrealized, they like to see things are moving in the correct direction. So a smaller collection, it's easier to move. I think that I've definitely noticed is the sentiment is strong there. But yeah, we have put a huge focus on entertaining, making this fun, and really recognizing that no one's having fun in the market. And while I understand the general reasons why, if you do a good enough job at entertaining, people can have fun. And then mixing kind of our gaming background and applying game theory to the whole collection. So if you were in the bears, you would realize that the act of collecting bears is actually a little bit of a casual game. It's not a game that you're slamming the keyboard on your phone, but there is a gamification element to it, which we're also going to add to this open edition today, which is going to be incredible. But we've put such a huge focus on delivering value back to holders and making sure that we don't think from a place of value extraction and more on value generation into their direction. So when you make holders happy, entertain, when you make their bag a little bit bigger, they make sure everybody knows that they're happy, and the community has obviously been loud and proud in return. And yeah, we're small, we're dense, but people know about us because the community has made sure everyone knows. And part of the motivation with this open edition, obviously, we want to celebrate Mimo's amazing work, because without his illustrations, we don't have anything. But the fact is economically, our ecosystem is very expensive, and it's not easy to enter for a huge amount of people. And the obstacles to enter into Web3 are big enough as is. So for the people that are already here and can't participate, we wanted to give them a place that they could feel was home to them in Web3. And this open edition being priced at 0.02 ETH with a 24-hour unlimited supply, whatever, the supply will be what they decide, is a very inclusive way to think about it. And ultimately, our community will grow a lot, and the storytelling and all the video and stuff that we put out can be enjoyed by more people, which is really exciting and fun for us.
Yeah, I think that's, I love that open edition, component, right? We actually just did an episode of the podcast talking about like what CPG is doing with their open editions, where they were using it as kind of like a 2-week window. If you own the open edition, you get a 2-week taste of what's going on in their Telegram. I'm a CPG holder, and I bought a couple and gifting them to a couple of friends that I can, give them a taste. But to your point, like, right, like how do you, because that's the truth of the matter is, exclusivity matters for community and growth. Like people like having being a part of something that's exclusive, but you also want to make it inclusive. Also, you want to, the only way that supply and demand really takes off is that if people understand why some people either aren't selling or understand that value. But I love that you're doing that with the open edition side, also celebrating your artists, which I think is super creative, and we'll be tapping into that for sure. I'm curious, the one thing I just wanted to double back on before we wrap. You mentioned like kind of the game side and the game theory, right? And I hear, I own so many NFTs that have, gaming components, right? But a lot of them haven't been in the digital space to understand true gamification or reward mechanisms or leaderboards or like those kind of components. And then a lot of other ones don't even know what it means to create a game or even an app for that matter. Yet, they put it on their roadmap for 6 months out, right? So what's your take on like that spot side? And then what are maybe for those that are listening that really want to understand the game theory element of like you mentioned, not only fun and entertaining, but I still check in on Foursquare and Swarm and to be mayor of my, local, tropical smoothie, even though it doesn't get me anything, right? Like talk to me a little bit about that side before we wrap. Cause I think that's such an important component that you guys have experience in and you've integrated in your project.
So building games that are decent is really difficult. We've got about 40 million downloads lifetime. 3 games made it to the top 10 on iTunes, which is like a lifetime achievement. If I accomplished nothing else in my career, I would have been proud of that. Really proud of it. And we've got about, call it like a graveyard of like 30 games that sucked. Now, the games looked good. They maybe felt good to play, but they didn't work economically. The retention wasn't high enough on them. And that's from like a bunch of people that like devoted years to making games and had success. What I say to people that basically, for whatever reason, felt it's compulsory to put a game on your roadmap, it's so thoughtless. I mean, like you can't just make a game. And buying a game template on like the Unity apps, the Unity store, is not game development and reskinning it a different color. Game development is so difficult. If somebody hasn't built games before, I would be very, very, very nervous going anywhere near that founder personally. Now, on the flip side, game developers going into NFT, I'm really bullish on, because game development there's creative direction, there's illustration, there's animation, there's very hardcore engineering. Marketing you kind of cover all these different bases that are important. Now, with regard to gamification and a lot of the things that you were asking about, what game developers have learned is building virtual ecosystems. So, it's a very parallel path to our ecosystem in our, from a tokenized ecosystem. Obviously, there's different sides of the marketplace, but in a game, you've got to think about, all these different things, points, how do you reward the points, levels, how hard can a level be, how easy can it be, is there a warm-up period, how, monetization, how do you put ads in there, how often, are they skippable, are they not skippable, in-app purchase, do you want people to be able to make the game kind of easy and buy their way through it, or do you want it to have balance? All these things are, you have to be very analytical in the way that you set them up and very thoughtful, because if you're out of whack, the thing will be ruined. And we found a similar dynamic with our token ecosystem in the KillaBears, where things are a little bit different. The factors that move it are a little bit different, but balance is critical. Things having a reason to exist is critical. And Foursquare, I'm impressed that you still check in at locations. I am really impressed, Fanzo. That is something.
I don't know if it's something to brag about, or more of I've traveled to 76 countries, right? So I'm very traveled. So like part of my history of where I've traveled, where I've been, a lot of it was checking in, right? And in a weird way, when I fly to a new city, it's literally my I was here, this many months ago, and this is my how many time. And people always give me a hard time, like, how do you know how many times you've been places? I'm like, there's actually this app that had like a simple gamification mechanism that allowed us to be rewarded. I still don't even know what those coins were that I was getting every time, right? But it did have that component. But I would just say, like, the context you just provided in the last answer, in my opinion, it needs to be heard across the board to every NFT project founder, because like the mechanics that you just explained could be implemented in a project without having to have a game, and like understanding like the reward mechanisms, and like you said, I mean, even just the idea of retention and the concept of not only what brings people back to your website or to your Discord, but also like what makes people care and like feel like they're a part of something more than just simple ownership, right? Where I'm a Jeep driver, and I always laugh because like Jeep drivers like love their Jeeps, and we have like our own little Jeep sign. It's like there is like a feeling there, but it's like kind of a deep rooted versus like someone that just has a Civic, and no shot at someone that has Civics, right? But like there is like these elements that are often built within cultures and communities that are powerful. So I love that you came over to jam with us. Definitely shout out to Drew, my producer side. He was super stoked that you were willing to come out and chat with us here. So we have open edition dropping. I know for those that are listening on the podcast side, you're probably going to miss the open edition side, but talk to us a little bit about like, hey, we're going to do that. We're celebrating our artist. What does that look like? But also give us a taste of like, what are your thoughts of this like moving forward? Because I think the open edition trend we're going to see continue in waves, of course, as to be expected. So love to hear your take on that, and then I'll let you go and go get ready for that open edition mint.
For sure. So I think open edition is cool. I was buying them from I didn't really know much about it, a month ago. So I was buying from a side wallet because I was a little nervous about what could happen. But Manifold is great. We're actually not minting on Manifold. We're minting on our website. We wanted to have more control over the contract and what we do with these NFTs as we progress further. But I think, we're the first NFT collection to do it. It's obviously like everything else we do in Web3 and in our universe, experimental. But we really appreciated what the artists were doing with theirs on Manifold. And we thought, this could be something interesting. Let's play with it. So we spent a couple of weeks thinking through different scenarios and how this could play out and how we could expand our community and give kind of a gift to Web3 of being a part of the KillaBears, while still there isn't, to be inclusive so everybody can do it, but exclusive is the current core ecosystem of the KillaBears. So we're both inclusive and exclusive in that regard, but I think this is something we're going to see more of. I do think there will be abuse of it after this. I think whenever a trend comes out in this kind of space, people go nuts. So people went nuts in the bull market with PFP projects when they probably shouldn't have, because they had no intention or skills to go further. And those became rugs, unfortunately. And free mints were probably abused. It got too deep and too hot and heavy. And I think ultimately we will probably see the same here. But our intentions here are really pure, and we are excited about it. And it's a technology that I do think is very interesting. So, we've put our spin on it, and we're really excited to welcome so many new people to our community. I think they're all going to love all of what we do from a story and video perspective, and also just from a gamification perspective. What are we going to do with these open editions? We haven't said. All we've done was we dropped a couple of videos, and there's going to be some more video today. 11 o'clock Eastern, we dropped the first, and people need to buckle up. This is going to be different. This is going to be totally KillaBears. It's going to be totally us. And I just hope whoever comes after us with this has good intentions and respects the game. I couldn't have more respect for this game of Web3 and NFTs. And I think that's part of the reason for our success is we really respect everything about it. And I hope that other founders hear this message and hear what I'm saying, because if we treat Web3 well, we treat the early adopters and the collectors well, and the culture well, it's going to be really good back to us, and there's going to be a brighter future. So really excited about this. I absolutely can't wait. I wish it was happening right after this podcast, but I'll have lunch. I'll have another coffee. I'll talk to some people, and we'll let it rip at 4:20 Eastern time.
Well, that's exciting. I'm excited to pick up some for sure. I got my wallet locked and loaded, and I think entry point to a community, right? I think that's also a piece of this. But you're right. I mean, marketers ruin everything always, but let's not be Web3 leaders that ruin everything, right? I think it's easy to blame the outsiders and those that are the money hungry rug pullers, but there's also a difference between like, hey, recognizing, game recognizes game, right? I love that you said like, hey, we bought some on this side to understand mechanics, but then we made it ourselves, right? And I just want to stress that to everybody listening, right? Like this idea, this isn't about copying everything. It's about learning and listening and seeing what works and then adapting. And the blockchain really gives us functionality and technology that is freaking amazing that we're probably using 1/100th of right now, if that alone. But I think the key is, like you said, respecting the overall side and also recognizing like what can we learn from free mints that could help projects that are going to drop in the next 2 months, or what we can learn from open editions for projects that are going to launch in 2 months, but also projects that launched 2 years ago. If they're trying to be revived, what can we learn from some of these different mechanics and things? So Ben, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Thanks for, especially on the day that your open editions are coming in there. And I'm looking forward to we'll make sure the podcast gets out there early next week for everybody to listen to, and everyone go check out KillaBears. Love the website. Like you said, great video, great content. I was going in a deep dive and then found myself not only entertained, but just amazed at the quality of content that you guys are putting out, which is hat tip to your team, because I don't think we give quality content enough of its due in this Web3 space. And if quality content is out there, for the most part, we've seen good things kind of back it up. So thanks so much, Ben, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to come back sometime soon.
For sure. All right, everybody. Until next time, make it a great day, everybody. Cheers.